We're waking up. The American people, the American population is waking up to the stronghold that a certain sector of Jews, right? A sector of the Israeli political party or a sector of the Jewish state. These are these people that are kind of shaping our reality. And he's going to dive into that. So I'll let Nick speak for himself. Let's run it. And by the way, we're in our family's vacation home in Ensenada. It's just like my father-in-law, he built this home many years ago. So we have a beautiful view. I'm on top of the house, but it's beautiful here. So I figured, why not film here in Ensenada, Mexico? So
welcome to Mexico.
I saw something today on Twitter which I thought was really interesting. I saw a couple of things that I just want to recap in the context of some of the conversation we've had lately about Trump, Tucker Carlson, and Candace Owens. And I've said this for the past few weeks. It goes without saying, everybody seems to be waking up about Israel and the Jews. It's safe to say in a very broad way that everybody seems to understand that something's up. Something is going on. Maybe people don't know precisely what is happening. And I think that some people are misinformed or ill-informed, and some people are cruel. Some people are taking it too far, and it's taking on a hateful flavor, or maybe too radical or too excessive. But everybody, I think at this point, it goes without saying, there is a general consensus universally that something is going on. Something is up with the Jews and with Israel. And vaguely, the contours of this, again, to the extent that some people are very hateful, some people are not very well informed, some people don't have a very specific idea. There's not a lot of specificity to their conception of what's happening. Everybody recognizes basically that the Jews have a lot of power. They love Israel, and they're using their power over our country to benefit Israel, even though it doesn't necessarily benefit America. That's the gist of it. And that's the big thing that's been going on.
if you identify with what Nick's saying right here, if you're feeling this right now, and if you're really seeing the reality being peeled back, it's like an onion layer, right? Every time that layer gets peeled back, we're seeing a whole nother layer. And it's quite interesting to watch it unfold in real time.
Said for the past couple of months, there's something else happening, which is maybe equally important. And it's trailing that development. It is trailing behind that development. What do I mean by that? I mean that the realization that Jews love Israel, they have this power, they're using their power to help Israel in a way that isn't beneficial for America, that conversation has become unavoidable. It happened organically, it happened spontaneously. It is so big that it is too big to ignore. It is truly a mass awakening on a subject that was previously taboo. And that taboo was bolstered and maintained by a robust censorship regime. For the longest time, people could not talk about this openly or express a particular opinion or viewpoint about it, because to express that viewpoint would get you censored. That the information, that opinion was suppressed. The information about it was suppressed. Anyone that spoke openly and forcefully about it was isolated and punished.
If you were isolated, punished, or targeted at all over any of this, I want to know in the comments down below.
A few different circumstances, or I should say a few different developments that created a circumstance around about 2023 and 2024 that created this spontaneous, organic awakening. And those developments were the October 7th attack and the subsequent Israeli siege of Gaza. And the other is Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter, as well as the general liberalization of social media. It seems that the more excessive editorial censorship policies started to get relaxed around that same time that Elon acquired Twitter. So you could say late 2023 throughout 2024. So as these two things happened together, of course, people noticed what was happening in Gaza. They started to speak out about it. And because of the general climate of social media censorship, suddenly for the first time, they were not being censored. The information, those opinions were not being suppressed, at least not as much as they were before. That's the big development. What has trailed behind that, what has taken place after the fact, in reaction to this, is that there seems to be an appeasement, a calculated appeasement that is taking place. Now, other people don't see it this way. Some people say it's not an appeasement. Some people say there's an awakening of people in the institutions. What am I talking about here? All of a sudden, in 2024, suddenly, very mainstream figures on the right wing started to criticize Israel. This is something that was unheard of. Always, the masses, the throngs of the peasants, were more radical than the institutions. The institutions are the mainstream media, the political parties, the political media like Fox News and the constellation of conservative press, publications, the social platforms, and other elite people in society. So the peasants, the masses, have always been inconveniently radical in their politics, at least more so than the institutions, like the Tea Party, like the Trump election in 2016, like the Buchanan brigades, like many different things. The institutions have always acted as gatekeepers. The institutions have always mediated the conversation of the peasants to make sure that it doesn't go too far outside the bounds of what the regime will accept. They're acting in a gatekeeping capacity, in a moderation capacity. They're controlling that conversation and the limits of what is accepted inside of it, and they're trying to be judicious. And as this mass awakening has occurred, the institutions seem to be echoing the sentiments of the people. This is unheard of. You have the people are waking up and criticizing Israel, talking about Jews, and now all of a sudden, on sort of a delayed reaction, lagging behind, trailing just so slightly, are people like Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, even lately Charlie Kirk.
I will say I watched the podcast that he did last night. And when he was talking last night, he was saying, why is it that there's this slightly mediated feeling that Candace and Tucker are exposing just enough to feel like they're actually exposing something or talking about something that needs to be talked about, when he's pointing out that there might be some mediated, some type of moderated leak of information to, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. It sounds like he's about to dive into that right now.
Megyn Kelly, Anna Kasparian, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, among others. People that come from the institutions, the institutional media, the political parties, and so on and so forth, they're starting to sound similar to what the people are saying. And the reason this is remarkable is because the institutions are answerable to Israel and the Jewish oligarchs in a way that the people are not. Fox News is beholden to Rupert Murdoch, who is an ally of Israel. If you want to get any kind of money in the GOP, you need to be pro-Israel, or else AIPAC is going to destroy you. If you want to have any kind of play or access in the conservative Republican politics space at all, you need to be unconditionally, completely pro-Israel, or else you will be. And so the institutions are sort of lagging behind. And some people are saying, well, the institutional actors, like the peasants, are just getting red-pilled. They're having their own awakening. If your uncle and your parents and your family are getting red-pilled, well, shouldn't we give someone like Tucker or Candace or Megyn Kelly the benefit of the doubt? Maybe they're getting red-pilled too. They had a legitimate good faith awakening. They discovered previously unknown information and changed their minds. I would characterize it and say that they're trying to moderate this conversation too. The mass awakening is so big that it's unavoidable. It has to be talked about. It is concerning a very significant issue. The change in public opinion is drastic, and it's concerning an issue that previously there was very little room for disagreement, for an alternative perspective. And so I think in the context of this awakening, now these institutional actors are coming to the fore. They're not having a good faith epiphany, change of heart. Rather, they are strategically echoing some of the major complaints echoing some of what can be considered a moderate critique in an effort to mediate this conversation. This is kind of my going theory. And the reason they're doing this, it's not because they all got together and convened a meeting and said, the Goyim are waking up. We need to deploy some kind of counterintelligence operation. I don't think it's so intentional, although maybe it is. I think on some level it reflects an interest on the part of everybody in the system, maybe a competing interest, you might say, where they want to have credibility with their audience. If their audience is going in a direction, they sort of have to follow on some level. So as a broadcaster, as someone of influence, in order to maintain their credibility and their influence, they can't stand athwart all of their audience. They may have to follow the audience somewhat. Here's the other interest. As people with a platform that are part of the institutions, a Megyn Kelly, a Tucker Carlson, they're at Fox News, they're at cable news. They're in a position of great influence. They have connections to the government, to politicians. They have connections to billionaires. They're sort of in a web. They're entangled in a political web in a way that the peasants are not. You, at your regular job, you can have whatever opinion you want. It doesn't have any impact on the country. It doesn't have any impact on governance. But that is not so for a journalist living in D.C. their entire life, who regularly talks to senators and members of the National Security Council and the president himself.
Do you think that being a journalist in Washington, D.C., or being someone that's heavy in the political field and news and media that's kind of controlled by the deep state, if you will, or just big media, do you think that it impacts their overall views, overall perspective of the way that the American people should perceive things? Do you think that they feel that they're powerful enough to just kind of shape a narrative? I wonder what you think down below about our current public social media, especially the ones that are on the news and the ones that are being broadcasted out straight from the White House, if you will.
They have sort of this extraordinary interest in stability, a public interest as an institutional figure. And so maybe there's this competing interest that on the one hand, they are hearing their audience, they have some obligation to identify with their audience or echo their audience. Maybe there's a cynical play to maintain credibility. On the other hand, they also have this public interest in stability. They represent an institutional force. So they're not going to go so radical. They're not going to say, F it, I'm an anti-Semite, I think Hitler's cool. You don't really see that too much, other than from someone like a Kanye West, a Ye, who his whole persona is based on rejecting societal norms. Anyway, so I've sort of been observing this latter phenomenon because it's sort of interesting, isn't it? That clearly we have this control matrix. Everyone understands this. Jews as a group in America are extremely powerful. I'm not talking about Israel. I'm not talking about Zionists. I'm talking about American Jews. Jews that live in America are very powerful. They're one of, if not the richest ethnicity, one of, if not the ethnicity with the most educational attainment. They are vastly, disproportionately represented in every facet of elite society, in academia, Wall Street, government, you name it, finance, media. And they have used their influence in many different ways, in politics with these gangster-like organizations that represent their interests, like the ADL or like AIPAC. They have used these tactics to obscure the breadth and depth of their control, and also to suppress anyone that opposes it, anyone that critiques it. And they're playing a game of denial, denying anyone that challenges that power. Anyone that acknowledges the power, anyone that, again, is aware of, acknowledging, and opposing the breadth and depth of their influence, they're playing a game of denial, preventing those people from getting access to large amounts of money, preventing those people from being inside the government, gaining access to any institutional power, in finance or media or Hollywood. They did this to Mel Gibson. They did this to Ye. They're doing this to Thomas Massey. They've done it to many people. And so you sort of wonder, are these people that have been a part of the institutions for their entire lives, like a Megyn Kelly, a Tucker, a Candace, why now are all of a sudden they seeming to echo the mass awakening of the people? Are they truly on our side? Are they on the side of the red pill? Are they on the side of the awakening of the people? Or are they still an erstwhile acolyte of the Jewish control matrix? Are they still in some ways connected to it, in some ways supporting it? That's sort of the question. And there's a lot of distrust. If we have been lied to about this by these people for 20 years, you know, Tucker promoted the war in Iraq and worked for Fox News. Megyn Kelly worked for Fox News. People will say, oh, I see you're on our side. And this is a way that the revolting peasants, and I mean that in both ways, the revolting masses will be co-opted. If a Tucker echoes back to them, you're right, Epstein is an Israeli spy, you're right, we give Israel too much aid, the masses will follow him, and they will desist from overthrowing the regime. They will desist, they will stop. The momentum, the energy will be dissipated. And that's the purpose of a limited hangout. If they want to burn it down, if they want to flip over the tables, if they want to uncover every rock and see what's really going on, someone like a Tucker or Megyn Kelly swoops in to calm everybody down, a pressure release valve.
If you think Tucker, Megyn Kelly, some of these people possibly are working for the CIA or working for Intel or just working for the White House trying to get out a certain narrative, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think.
And say, hey, we hear you, we agree, we're your voice, yeah, there's a legitimate criticism and we are allowed to express it, but let's not take it too far. So I've been thinking and talking a lot about this because, of course, I know me. I know me, you know me. How do you know me? Because I have been doing a live stream since I was 18 years old. So unless I got co-opted for a very convoluted information operation out of high school, when I started doing my show when I was 17 and started this show in college when I was 18, that would be really convoluted. And you've watched me basically every day since, or you could watch me. You could see every episode every day since. And you can watch me grow up and explain my thoughts, and nobody can hide every day.
That's the thing. We can go back and you can watch Nick for the last 10 years if you wanted to. I'm sure you could find all of his content. So that's one thing, is you can't say he's pivoted or changed or trying to fulfill a certain narrative when he's been speaking the same language for 10 years, since he was a teenager. Do you feel like our government has been overtaken by one demographic, being the Jews? Do you feel that our public policy has been shaped by one demographic, being the Jews? Do you think that they have too much power? Do you think that we give them too much money? Do you think that we should have that money here instead, taking care of our people and taking America first? What happened to that? Why aren't we getting that? Isn't that what we voted for? MAGA? Make America Great Again. And honestly, I don't think that slogan should ever be used for another country. That should be reserved for the United States, not Israel. MAGA? Are you serious? That's like a slap in the face to the American people. If nobody else said it, I will. I think that is absolutely asinine. I thought MAGA was for us. That hurts. Let me know how you feel about all of this down in the comment box down below. Like, subscribe, and hit one of these playlists somewhere over here, one of these videos, because I gotta tell you, this information is only going to get crazier. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.